Good morning from Vietnam, Jeff. Thanks a lot for spending your morning on a busy day of unpacking everything, packing everything to move to the to new place, right? So a new country also. So I really appreciate you spending your morning joining our program and sharing your stories to our global audience. And on behalf of the listeners around the world, we want to say thank you.
Well, thank you for the invitation. Hi, and I apologize for my somewhat unprofessional look today. We're in the middle of packing and chaos around us, but it's great to be here, and I'll be interested to have this conversation with you. I think in my work, conversations are central to what I do, what I believe in terms of leadership and work, and life.
I'm very happy that we have a chance to connect because I really admire your work. You help leaders to get better through your coaching practices, and that's why I said, Jeff, please join and share your wisdom to our audience. And I think let's start with something that very honor for our audience here. In our culture, we would love to have you to share a little bit about who you are and the works that you do to our to the listeners. Would you please do that for us?
Of course, yeah. I've always been someone interested in education. I come from a part of Australia in the south, in Tasmania, and an island to the south part of Australia, and grew up in a small city and quite a restricted environment in many ways. But I was very fortunate to have a uncle and aunt who were very international. They were mathematics academics and were traveling the world and would open my eyes to different experiences and different ways of seeing things. And that kind of triggered my interest in going beyond being in Tasmania. Kind of my life has become a little bit more extended each year I go by. And, in education, I began in school teaching, but decided that was not my forte. Moved into government service and worked in a government broadcaster, the Special Broadcasting Service Australia, which is a multicultural broadcaster in 68 different languages. And I got to have a real interest in diversity and cultural different ways of seeing the world and different approaches to life. And then that extended to me going back to university and doing further research in psychology and then in cross-cultural management. And that's taken me to where I am now, which is in the world of coaching, which I've been in since 2003, I think. I would have started in coaching, and at that stage coaching was it was certainly established, but it was just starting to become a more recognized profession within business and work. So yeah, and since then, in many different ways, I've been using coaching, both as a executive coach, working with virtually and face-to-face in many different projects, and also as an academic in teaching coaching skills, mostly working with the QUT, the Queensland University of Technology, in the Graduate School of Business. I've taught for 10 years in the master's programs in leadership development, and at the same time running my own coaching business and working on different projects, including with a very big project with the Ford Motor Company, which finished with COVID, unfortunately. But yeah, so that's a kind of overall kind of picture of where I am. I'm now writing about coaching. I'm trying to bring together my thoughts and experiences in coaching for a slightly different, a fresh approach, I think, to coaching that reflects a little bit about the particular challenges that we face in the world at the moment, that maybe some different approaches to coaching might be helpful as we face new challenges in the global environment.
Wow. You have a phenomenal journey of traveling the world, teaching, of coaching, of writing articles and books, and having people to get better through your works, right? And you introduced to us, and I noted here in my clock here is less than 3 minutes, so it's not fair for our audience, Jeff. So we're gonna dive deeper to understand the moment, the dreams that you had, and what triggered you to take into that directions. Okay, so time travel, how does that sound to you?
Absolutely, and I thought it would be helpful just to give an overview and then
Yes,
to maybe to go back. But I think
yes.
the certainly the inspiration, particularly in my family, of my aunts and uncle, and that inspiration of getting a wide perspective. I think all of us find, I think, I'm sure yourself, there would be times where individuals have influenced your life, and for me, it was just that window into a different world that helped me to broaden my horizons. And I think the more I reflected on that, the more my dreams become more expanded, and they still become more expanded as I go. So that's
Yeah.
the
I'll lead the way with you, okay? When I was very, very little, I wanted to become an astronaut. The reason for that was very simple. I grew up in a very poor community. And so in that community is ruined after the war, and it's been rebuilding. So one night we might have electricity and we can see things around, right? Maybe the next night or so we didn't have electricity at all, so I couldn't see anything. So the only thing that beautiful on those dark nights was we'd be able to see the moon, and we'd be able to use that lights to walk around and see things around us, right? So at that time, I talked to many pupils that my dream in the future is becoming an astronaut so that I can travel to the moon, see how bright up there. Opportunity at all to do that, and interviewed General Charlie Duke, who is the youngest man out of the 12 men ever walked on the travel to the moon on Apollo missions, right? So for you, yeah, what was your first dream about the work that you are going to offer to the world, Jeff?
it was that. Yeah, I mean, I was always interested in history as a young academic and at university, and stories of the way people live, and just a rich interest in the way that different people live in different parts of the world. And but it never in up until I found coaching, I guess I didn't find a way that I fit with how I wanted to be. And I think I can almost remember, I don't think exactly the time. It was when I went back to education, back to tertiary study, and took it very seriously. I went back and studied psychology as an honours level at university. Did a thesis in the area of organisational psychology. I was really looking for a way to make a difference in organisations, because I was starting to realise that the core to flourishing is how people make sense of their values and their purpose, and how they connect with the world around them, and letting go of just hard goals of making money and achieving, to actually looking at meaning and purpose, and really an emotional relationship with your organization and with the people around you. So I was looking for a way of doing that, and I found, originally I thought organizational psychology was going to help me to find a place in that. But I found it very, the word is positivist, very much around measurement and around job design and around very hard organizational factors. And I just didn't feel that that was me.
Mm.
So I did finish the study, and I've got an advanced honours degree, and I'm thinking, I don't want to be a psychologist anymore. So I thought, I'm all dressed up with nowhere to go. And then I was in a bookshop in Sydney, waiting for a friend to go to a movie. It was across the road in Paddington in Sydney, for people who know Sydney. And the bookshop had a book on there called Coach Yourself by Dr. Tony Grant and Jane Green. And I picked the book up and started to read it. And I think I had about 10 minutes in the bookshop, and I straight away knew that I wanted to be a coach from that second, like within those few minutes. So I flicked the book over, and one of the authors, Jane Green, was in the UK, and Dr. Tony Grant was at the University of Sydney. So I thought, oh, this is easy. I'll go and see him. So I did. So I sat down with Tony and had a chat to him about what I wanted to do. And around that time, we were thinking, my partner and I were thinking of returning or going into Central America. My partner's family, he's originally from that region. And I wanted to travel and I wanted to do some research. And I thought about my work in broadcasting and intercultural broadcasting. So I put together a thesis idea for studying expatriate managers who are overseas in terms of cultural adjustment and how coaching might help them in terms of their work in adjusting and working in a new culture. So he said, yeah, I'll be a supervisor for that. So, all right, Tony, thank you. So then I tried to get that up through University of Sydney, but they weren't interested in doing it because it was too outside the field that they were looking at. So then I tried several other universities until eventually the Australian National University picked up the proposal. So I got 2 supervisors from the Australian National University and Dr. Tony Grant at the University of Sydney to be my supervisors. And my partner and I went to Canberra for 3 months and I did the proposal for the dissertation, and then we went and lived in El Salvador for 4 years.
Wow.
And, so in that 4 years, I had 15 different case studies of managers from overseas who were living and working in a very stressful environment in El Salvador, which at that stage was very, a lot of gangs, a lot of crime, poverty. And I was working in aid organizations, in embassies, in commercial companies, multinationals, of helping and working inside with managers to help them with the challenges that they were facing as people working in a pressured environment and crossing into different cultures. And that was my purpose in that, was to learn about coaching myself, because I'd done with Dr. Grant, I'd done his course in coaching. While I was in Canberra, I also travelled back and forth to Sydney to learn more about coaching through his course at the University of Sydney. So I started to build my knowledge of coaching through doing it and through studying inside the process of coaching, through transcribing the sessions and studying what was going on in the sessions and getting a far better feel for what was happening with the managers and how coaching might help them in terms of their challenges. So that was the kind of formative few years of doing my own acculturation and doing my own struggles of living and working in El Salvador. And I didn't speak and still don't speak great Spanish. I speak reasonable Spanish, but not at that stage, not good enough to work. And even now, it's not good enough to work, but good enough to have conversations. But so there was a very challenging time, but a very successful one in terms of the project, in terms of getting together a dissertation, and I got my doctoral studies completed in looking at these case studies and getting underneath the bonnet of coaching. For me to really, the dissertation was more literally about me learning about myself and about coaching. And so I came out of that. Now, I think, compounded with the knowledge I've got from coaching over many, many years, I think possibly I know enough of, well, as much about coaching as is necessary, one might say. It's and it's a very multidisciplinary practice. And the more I learn, the more I realize there is to know, to learn.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. You see, the moment, the 10 minutes that you spend waiting for your friend and looking at a book at the bookstore in Sydney turned out to be 23 years already, 22 years already in the coaching space, right? Uh, Jeff, I hear voices from somewhere.
No, I'm sorry, there's a bit of interference in the house, but that's okay. It'll stop. So
Okay.
yeah, we've got some people coming in and out of the house. So
Okay. Sorry about that. I thought that we have some interference from somewhere else. So sometimes it's voice from.
no, I'm sorry,
Jeff,
that's not too loud. Yeah.
no worry. I want to bring you to two moments in the conversation you just shared earlier. Okay, one was prior to you pursuing your PhD. Okay, because you've been on the quest to understanding, the relationship of people having values, having purpose, and emotional relationship they have with organizations and with individuals, that leading you to pursuing higher education to find the answer for that. So that's one. The second one is the moment that you knew coaching is something that you are going to pursue and become a coach, right? So explain to us the first one first. What made you to go into that journey to find the answer to that big questions in the complex world of human relationships, though?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the work I did in the special broadcasting service brought me into contact with a lot of people that were very committed to the organization, very committed to the idea of multiculturalism and of people's identity having an important part of who they are and their relationship with the organization. And I saw the power of that. And I also saw where that wasn't present, that people tended to, if people were just focused on material objectives and just focused on sort of day-to-day life, that it didn't seem to be engaging them in their full personalities and their identities. So, and the studies certainly show that if people can be in tune in their work with themselves, so that work and life are not separate, and certainly in your life, I can see that you've merged very much that combination of yourself as being part of your work is very important. So, by the way, is that noise too much in the background?
Just little here and there it came, but it's okay. We
right?
Please continue. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, and when I guess the emotional engagement people have with organizations and themselves and the relationship that they have, I think it's probably a moral rather than a productive, like it's not just about productivity. And more recently in the study of happiness within the positive psychology movement, it's this meaning and purpose. How do we align our meaning and purpose with our values in order to give ourselves a sense of deep satisfaction in our lives? And what my life has been about is helping people align where they are with who they are, and of having organizations as much as possible, helping people to make that alignment. And I really, unfortunately, if you're looking at a purely profit-driven capitalist approach to business, the trouble is too often we're rewarding people for behavior that does not align their values with the organization or does not align the values with a positive society. So I think what I'm doing in coaching now is questioning with people, what is the purpose of their lives? And is the work that they're doing actually aligned with that purpose? And often you find with executives, when you start having those conversations, that you start getting a different level of awareness, and people start to question some of their ways in which they're behaving within organizations. So it's kind of I use it carefully, but perhaps a slight Trojan horse approach to getting some conversations about meaning and purpose within the corporate environment, because it's easy to lose sight of people and lose sight of bigger questions of ethics and purpose in organizations if you're just going for the bottom line, if that's all you're thinking about.
Yeah.
And you get bigger issues now around sustainability, about the climate, and around our responsibility as corporate citizens to looking at sustainability and social justice, while at the same time understanding that businesses are still there to make profit. So it's that dance between profit and corporate social responsibility. That's a place I think coaching has a big role to play, and I quite enjoy being in that place and asking the questions. Perhaps as a coach, I can ask the questions that perhaps you don't hear from your colleagues in organizations.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
I can take people into a different way of thinking about things.
Yeah. I'm curious, since we in this part, I'll hold on to the second one for the time being. Okay. Let's dive deeper in here, because my wife and I, we always curious about the power of nature versus nurture. And in case of you, Jeff, that seed of curiosity in looking for answers in the big questions in life, where did that come from?
I think it's just maturity. It's when, in my experiences in growing up and going through different, like in terms of lack of satisfaction in certain roles that I had in my work, and asking myself questions about really what I wanted to do. I think that really made a difference. So as I went through different experiences and different I guess disenchantment with work, like I thought I wanted to be a school teacher, and I thought I would be happy in my work in broadcasting, but there was something missing. So there was always a search for a different way of using my skills and my talents and my personality to make a difference. I like to make a difference, and I felt in these other roles that I wasn't making a difference, that this was not something, there was not a sense now when I do my work, and it's more than when I do my work, when I turn up and when I'm present, I like to think that the people I'm with are in some way having some kind of positive experience in being with me. And I think in coaching, that's an extension of that into the professional world, but it's still the same principle. How am I helping people to have a better life and a better experience by conversations with me?
Wow. Wow. So now we take into the second part of the questions that I mentioned earlier. And in our Asian culture, we have some sayings. This is when the student is ready, the teacher appears, right? And you've been looking for the answer for long enough, and the law of the attraction law, it will bring you the answer. So I want to bring you to that bookstore in Sydney. Okay, because bookstore, you have so many different books in there.
Yeah.
What made you pick Coach yourself out of the many other attracting books on the shelves?
That's a lovely question. What was it? I do remember seeing, I don't think I have the book here. I think I've packed it away. I still have the book, but what made me see that? Just that very, it just said, coach yourself. And I thought, that's interesting. What does that mean? I think I was curious about the topic and this idea of a coach. Because normally, and I remember when I started, people, when I talked about coaching, they thought that I was a soccer coach, or they thought I was but this, at that stage, this term of the coach, because I'd done all the sports coaching as a teacher, I guess I was a coach, but I was just curious about this term coach, and coach yourself. In fact, the book was not about coach yourself. It was about coaching others. But even though it was about coaching yourself, and you could use the book to coach yourself, I never thought about it from that perspective. It was all around, and more and more coaching has become, and the writing that I'm doing at the moment is more and more around the systemic collective approach to coaching. So it's not, if I'm coaching you, less and less it's just about you and I, and more it's about your world and my world, and how they interact, and what's happening outside, and what conversations are you having with other people in your life, and how is our coaching conversation influencing that, And also, how is that influencing me? Because it's not a one-way, like hopefully the questions you're asking me today and the conversation we're having is in some way shifting my perspective in the way that I lead the conversation. So every conversation in some small way, if it's a real conversation, is going to have a little impact on changing who we are as people. Because I think we go into conversations and we give our point of view, and then we go away and then we give our point of view somewhere else, and we give our point of view somewhere else, and give our. But I'm more interested as how am I different when I go around away from this conversation with you.
Wow.
I'm noticing the ship on the right. I'm wondering about the painting.
Yeah, it's a gift from my dear friend. His name is Kwon, and I took him to Da Nang for a fishing trip. And when he came back, he draw that. He saw that drawing, and he sent over to Ho Chi Minh City where I live, and as a gift from a friend to a friend. So thanks for noticing that.
I love the lights. I love the lights on the boat.
Yeah. Did you like fishing
beautiful.
yourself?
As a boy, like we used to fish in Tasmania, and the beautiful coastline of Tasmania, where if you got in a little dinghy, you could go out and catch fish and sit amongst the kelp beds and get fish. But now the kelp beds have gone and sold the fish, so it's very sad. And they've got professional salmon farming that's ruining the coastlines around Tasmania. So it's a sad thing. Yeah.
Let's see. Let's go back to the moment that you pick up the book, Coach Yourself, and you're curious about, Coach Yourself, what it was and what it's supposed to be, right? Then you said that within the minutes of reading, you knew that you are going to be a coach. So the word "new" is important. You know that that is something that you wanted to become, the answer that you've been fighting, that now is there. And there's many things happen in front of everybody's eyes every day. The books that we read, the news that we watch and stuff that could trigger us to become, to find the answers, or to become something, or something that we want to become. But people let it pass through in their life, right? So at that moment, tell us how did you know that coaching is the answer?
Well, what was disappointing to me, I guess, because I just finished the year before, I'd finished my honours degree, and I started to attend conferences and give presentations at conferences in coaching, in psychology, sorry. And I looked at social psychology, organizational psychology, clinical psychology. And it was very, very scientific, but not very human, which is somewhat ironic, given that psychology is meant to be helping people. But I felt that coaching, when I read the book and started to look at what they were doing, and I remember part of the book, he was talking about the importance of talking to people about their vision, about what he talked about. He talked about a fuzzy vision of people, helping them to form some kind of sense of where their life is heading. I'm now writing a little bit about this idea of what's your voyage. So not what's your goal, but what's the voyage that you're envisaging for yourself in your life. And I thought that's a very exciting way of looking at things. It's also his philosophy in the book came from a solution-focused approach. So at that stage, positive psychology was relatively new as a way of thinking about people and change. But for him, the solution-focused question is what's possible. That's always the question. Not what's wrong, but what's possible. And that idea is right through his thinking all the time. Of what resources do we have? What strengths do we have? What possibilities are there? What's the vision for the future that we can do given what we've got, not what we don't have? So it's a flourishing resource approach, strength-based approach, rather than much of the psychology that you still now is based on fixing things, fixing what's broken. But most people will respond better if given an opportunity to look at what's right. I want to know when I'm working with people, what are they great at? What's the thing that defines them as being distinctive and different? And work with that to then later to come back to the inevitable limitations and problems that people have in their lives, but what are the strengths and possibilities that they have that can help them to flourish anyway, regardless of the circumstances that they're in. So I think that message, even in the few minutes I had to read the book, and I pick, one of my strengths is that when I read something, I pick up the meaning quite quickly. And in that book, which was written in a very accessible way, I could get through a lot of the essence of what he was talking about very quickly. And straight away, that was hitting buttons in my head to say, yes, this is what I want to do.
Wow.
Because it was shedding some of the baggage of the professional psychology that I'd seen, which was swamped in statistics and swamped in problematic thinking and of limitations and disorder. So getting a new language of possibility was quite exciting.
Wow. I think that not only that you understood back then about the idea, the principles that he wrote on the book, and I think that the author is Tony Grant and Jane Green, right? So you also did one thing is very beautiful. You turned the back of the book and saw who's the authors of the book. Then you know that Tony is in town. You decided to meet him in person. So to further the curiosity and the possibilities of, advancing in the knowledge of that you have with the book. And so you walk into his door, it's the office. Tell us that experience that you had when you decided to meet Tony and how everything turned out.
Well, he was an interesting character. Sadly, a couple of years ago, he passed away. But we remained over those years in contact, and he was a very pivotal figure in connecting me with a lot of different people and in inspiring me in my work. So when I met him, by trade, he was a builder. Like, he came, an English background, came to Australia as a builder and was working in building houses. And he said to me, Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock, everybody stopped work and he started to drink beers, as Australians do. And he said, I think I'll stay in Australia. But he went from being in construction through to doing a psychology degree and then setting up the coaching psychology unit at one of Australia's most traditional universities. So he's successful in getting into the field of psychology with a whole new branch of psychology, of coaching psychology, that really challenged the field. So when we talked about that, what I really loved about him was his professional, his provocative and very controversial approach to psychology. And I went to an event at Sydney University where he was presenting to the faculty, and they attacked him, basically, as this not being real psychology, this being very flimsy in terms of its evidence base. So I was very attracted by his countercultural approach. And all the time when you're talking to him, you're talking to someone that's on the edge all the time, of not being in the middle. And I think that's where I like to be myself. I think we connected on that level. And he said to me, as I was putting together the proposal for the PhD, he said, I was giving him all the reasons why I didn't think I could do it. And he stopped me and he said, well, how much do you really want to do it?
Wow.
And I didn't even answer the question. I just went and did it. So that was he with one short question, focused me in the moment on my passion to get this thing done. So, yeah.
So 23 years in the coaching industry. What makes you love about this industry most?
What do I love about the industry most? I just love doing coaching, really. I like the fact that the spark people get. Like I just came this morning from a meeting of coaches in Brisbane, just the local association for coaching. We had a breakfast to talk about what we got out of a recent global conference that was held in Brisbane on positive psychology. And just the spark in people's eyes. Coaching is like an addiction almost. People get very excited about it. And you know, I must admit, when I'm doing these interviews, in a way, I'd rather stop the interview and ask you questions. So I'm very curious. I'm looking at the background and think, this is very interesting here. There's all sorts of little triggers in here I'd like to know more about. But so it's it's that curiosity, that constant curiosity. And recently there was a coach that writes and talks about coaching, and he says, even going beyond curiosity into looking for wonder and awe. Wonder and awe.
Wonder and awe.
Yeah, like not just be curious, but look for wonder and awe rather than just be curious. So it's another level up in terms of, you know, what's out there. Yeah.
How do we get there? And it's the first time I heard about, you know, moving from curiosity into the next level to be wonder and awe.
It's just more interesting, isn't it? It's just another.
It is. Yeah.
It's another level where you think, oh, okay.
Hey.
So yeah. So
How
I'm
can we
thinking
do that?
there's a word that's just come in, and I'm sure you've run into it in the interviews. The word radical starts. Yeah. It's got into the leadership language a little bit. There was a lady, I think in the States, talking about radical candor. I don't know if
Scott. Yes.
Yeah. So this is high compassion, high directness, high compassion. Culturally a bit dodgy, but it's but this bringing two things together that are in conflict. And I was listening to a talk by a academic in the world in the field of hope. His name was Andreas Kraft, and you could probably interview Andreas if you'd be really interested. He's done a global study of hope in different societies. And he found out that in societies that are less developed or less economically forward, hope is much stronger than in well-developed societies like Australia and Switzerland and modern Western democracies. Because the more you have, the more there is of loss. So you're less hopeful. The better positioned you are, the lower your levels of hope. Which is a quite interesting finding. But he came across the idea of radical hope. And radical hope is, and I've got the quote here from this is a longer story, but the writer that he was quoting had looked at the history of the North American tribe, the Crows tribe in North America. And what had happened was, at a point in time, the buffaloes stopped coming as they were used to come every year. The buffaloes stopped coming. And the chief said after that, nothing happened. Because the whole basis of their society was undercut. So his thinking was, radical hope is where, even though everything's been decimated, the loss of the whole tribal way of life, what's beyond that? So this idea of radical hope is, even when everything's lost, is to look beyond it. And I'll give you the quote. It's just fascinating. He defined hope. Jonathan Lear is the writer of the book. Jonathan Lear, he says, radical hope is the future for which one hopes. When the future for which one hopes exceeds one's own imagination.
Exceed one's own imagination.
So you can't actually, radical hope is where you can't, your own imagination can't quite grab where the hope is. It's a radical hope beyond your horizon that you currently have for what's possible. So when those buffaloes stopped, they couldn't imagine beyond the buffalo, but they still went anyway. they still continued anyway, and they were able to create a future for the tribe that went beyond the buffalo. But at the time, that sentence, after that, nothing happened. Well, yes, it did. So radical hope was there beyond their imagination, but it emerged through their efforts in the hope that something better would happen. So I think in a time at the moment where, frankly, the world's in a bit of a mess, climate change, political disruption, all sorts of potential conflicts in our region, around the world, you could look back and say, well, there's not a lot of hope of things getting better quickly, if at all. So we have to hold this radical hope that perhaps we can't necessarily see where that future is, but we have to have the hope anyway that it's there. So it's beyond our imagination, but it's still possible.
Wow. So what is your radical hope in the space of leadership and the space of coaching to make human flourish?
Well, that's the paradox of radical hope, is that I can't see it. So it's beyond my imagination. So, but I know it's there. So perhaps it's somewhere within AI. Perhaps it's within a new form of government. Perhaps it's coming through. Maybe we have to go backwards before we go forwards. But something, we have to have the belief that something will happen. The father of positive psychology, Martin Seligman, who introduced this whole day of positive psychology back in the probably late 80s, early 90s. His work, when he was interviewed at the conference, he said people were coming up to him, young people, and saying, well, what do we do? We can't see the hope. We can't see, climate change is taking us away. All of this geopolitical conflict is taking us away from seeing a future that's going to be okay. And he said, well, you've got a choice. You can be miserable and you can be negative and you can lie down and you can say things are hopeless and give up. That's a choice, and have a negative mindset. And the consequences of that is that you will be unhappy and that you will be less productive and have a less of a life than if you choose hope. So it may not be rational, but it's a choice that's a better choice than not having it. So it's so that's, I think, where the space of radical hope sits. And I'm writing a bit now about radical success in coaching, where we go beyond. When I was learning coaching, we learned about goal setting and SMART goals. Specific, measurable, attractive, realistic time frame, the SMART goals.
Yes.
Well, that's not radical success. I mean, having a voyage that's exciting, that's full of wonder and awe, that's more radical success. And what's that look like? Well, we don't know. It's beyond the imagination. It's radical hope. It's beyond the imagination of what our lives might look like if we open ourselves up to the wonder and awe. If we go for something that we can't necessarily see exactly what it's going to look like.
Wow. Jeff, you gave me a dose of energy for today. And that's beyond my search for this. I'll tell you the story. A month ago, I was sitting in the couch here and trying to read a book, right? I couldn't read a book. And when I couldn't read something that I really, really love doing, I knew that something is not easy inside of me. And so I moved to another place in my house, trying to find the attention and then try to stay focused. And really, I couldn't do it again. So I knew that there was something that I need to find the answer. So I sat down and I took this same notebook and pens, right, and write down something in my head. And I came up with the idea that my whole life is a journey to exploring newness. right? So new territory, new place, new kind of job, meeting new people, finding the new insights that we can share to others. So I went out and I to the internet and I bought a domain called helloNEWNESS. So the
Okay.
principle, yeah, and the
Yeah.
principle, I when people ask me what do I want to do with helloNEWNESS, I say I don't know. I don't know yet. And I knew that newness is something that each of us, if we don't explore newness, then we become in like, in the, we let time flies in front of our eyes, right? But if we catch in time together with it and go with that, its speed, then we enjoy the world full of potential, full of possibilities. And I don't know what to do with that now, but, through what you just shared, it gave me hope. And, the radical success, what you mean, you say earlier, right? We don't know what we do, we just do it and just figure out what it is along the way. Maybe you and I can do something together with that helloNEWNESS platform.
Yeah. Anything's
Hey,
possible. Anything's possible. So I think
yeah.
and that's what I'm writing about with the approach I'm talking about is I'm talking about the coaching vibe, VIBE, the coaching
Mhm.
vibe. It's and in the
The
coaching
framework.
question, yeah, the framework is it's basically it's a traditional coaching model, but it's in the middle of it. It's got
Mm.
energy, but it's an energy model. And what are the drivers of human energy? And that, as a coach, that's what I'm really interested in. And the two things that define the coaching vibe are the energy, and we get our energy through meaning and purpose and our values and hope. We must have hope. And also of the bringing together of conflicting ways of seeing the world. So this not taking one side or the other, but how do these things fit together? It's that paradoxical approach and very much Eastern thinking of the conflicting and interrelationship of opposites. So these are the things that drive coaching, and the context in which we are. The context is so important. The energy in the context in which the person is operating. And that's what this approach is all about. And the question that I really like to ask all the time, at any time, you can ask it for yourself, or you can ask it openly, as I might ask it now. What is the vibe here and now? So for you, like if we're asking the question, what is the vibe for you here and now? What is the vibe here and now for us? How would you describe
Connecting.
that? Yeah.
I feel it connecting. I feel it's connecting the very deep level. I feel the enjoyment in this conversation. The energy is really, really high. I see the collaboration. I see the excitement of knowing you, of maybe on the other side, the curiosity, the excitement that you have of knowing me and the background with many questions that you mentioned earlier, right? So
I,
I see all of these combining.
wow. Yeah. And for me, I see that boat and I see the light on the boat and I see the boat heading out. And I don't know where it's going and I don't know what they're doing, but I'm really interested.
Yeah.
So I'm drawn to that all the time. So there's an energy in that image and an energy in you that makes this conversation. And there's in the bookshelf and in the context around you. And I feel that the vibe is very much more than just you and I having a conversation. There's a whole richness in what's going on.
And I hope
But that
that
simple question, what is the vibe here and now? So when you're in a meeting, when you're on a call, when you're by yourself, okay, what's the vibe here and now? It's a mindfulness practice, really.
wow. I think that small, short question, very powerful for every one of us when we go into a meeting, right? Like one-to-one meeting, husband and wife meeting, family dinner meeting, or gathering events, or business casual meetings. We ask people what's the vibe that we want to have for today. What is the vibe here and now? So it's remind people about their responsibility to collaborate, to like put in the best energy and efforts to make everything the best for outcome for that particular event. That's very important. Otherwise, we've been carried by our own thoughts, the busyness within our own mind, and we're there, but not there, and it's ruined a lot
Yeah.
of things that's supposed to be beautiful. So yeah,
So it's noticing. Yeah, it's noticing what is the vibe, and is it the vibe I want? And if it's not, how do I want it to be? What's my intention for
yeah,
this time? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, so when we got started, the vibe, when we got started, there was an awkwardness. There was a kind of, between us, finding a way for the interview to move. And there was, I'm sure this is common when you're interviewing, to find the right vibe for the interview, that you and the person that you're with have a connection that's meaningful, so that when someone wants to watch or listen, they get something from it that's different.
yeah. I think Jeff, because we had that earlier, trying to find the vibe between you and I, and because we barely knew each other prior to this conversation. I know it's a beginning for a longer relationship that we could possibly build, right? For the people been knowing each other for a long time, I feel that the vibe has been um, take advantage of, because for example, like two good friends, they've been know each other for a long time, then they can come in without being mindful about what the energy and the vibes that they're gonna provide to a conversation that could potentially, you know, damaging the feelings, the energy of the other partner that they're having. So if we can have that little question like tattooing in our body every day to to know what the vibe
Because
here, that,
there's a, in relationships, I forget the quote, but in relationships, you don't, sometimes you miss the cues. You're so used to the way you are with someone that you miss often the nuances and the cues, and that little question about, okay, what's going on right here, right now, and use the language vibe or use something else, but it's a check-in. How am I feeling? What seems to be happening here? What's going on around, and
yeah.
it's a
Two
feeling.
last question. Two last question for this beautiful conversation, Jeff. Okay, and in this conversation, you mentioned the word thinking a lot, and I believe that your works, you've been helping people to improve their abilities to think. My wife and I, we've been on the quest to help people to improve their abilities to think, because we know that to us, we know that transformation starts from how we improve our ability to think. And there's no better way for us to help other people by asking, you know, like expert like you, expert who join our interviews and share the secret behind their thinking. So the big question for you is this: how have you been growing your ability to think over the years?
It's constant exposure to an educational environment and new experiences. I came across what could be described as systems thinking. When I moved to QUT about 10 years ago, we had some of the best systems thinkers in the world come into the university and talk about more than how to do things and what's happening now, but that whole systemic thinking about interrelationships and complex adaptive systems. And this morning it came up in the coaching conversations as though it was new, but it's an area I've been working on for many, many years. I'm constantly thinking about interconnectedness. And I think that's where, in coaching, I think it's more than a one-to-one conversation. And I've certainly expanding my conversations, and one of the reasons I was really interested in talking with you is it's another connection, another way of seeing the world, another perspective to add to the way that I see things. And that's why I'm going to Panama, because I think in Brisbane I've enjoyed life here, but I'd like to get a fresh look at things and to expand my horizons a little bit.
Wow.
Just being open to new pathways, so trying new things. Yeah.
Wow. So the last question, we're gonna travel time together, and this time we're gonna meet you and your partner in Panama, in El Salvador, right? El Salvador, and the time that you went there for research.
Panama, yeah. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. All right. And back then you went on a journey of searching for your program for your PhD, right? So you got a and now we meet you and your partner there, and you're gonna tell all of us about the journey into the coaching, the journey into the future of the works that you are going to do after the research had been done by you back then. Okay, how that journey looks like. So what is that you are going to tell yourself?
At that stage, I would have taught myself, would I have seen the same pathway? I probably would have seen a more international pathway. I've still done a lot of international work, but I think I would not have been quite as connected to Brisbane as I am. And I think that's one reason I'm keen to move on. I got very wedded I saw myself as quite mobile with different projects internationally. And I started to do that a little bit with the Ford Motor Company project, that we had a global project in putting coaching into Ford automotive dealerships around the world. I was the Australia New Zealand mentor for Ford Motor Company consumer experience movement. And that was very much more in the space that I wanted to be. And more projects like that. I thought I'd be doing more projects like that. As it was, I got swept into teaching a lot, particularly in the first few years in Brisbane, full on in university master's level teaching, which was fascinating. I learned a lot from exposure to the defense industries, interestingly enough, global big projects of defense infrastructure projects, and complex project management, this idea of thinking about complexity. So I got drawn into that, and I think I'm much better positioned now for the work I do in the future because of that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And yesterday I shared on my LinkedIn that I still have 14 countries to connect with experts, so that we can hit the 100 country goal that we have for 5 years. So if you come to Panama, or if you have experts in El Salvador that you've been in connect with, would you please do us a favor to introduce them to us so that we can invite them to this kind of conversation and learn from their wisdom in life also? Is that possible?
Yeah. Well, actually, my friend and colleague Carlos Romero in El Salvador is a wonderful coach who has been working as a business coach and uniquely in Latin America, and would have some very interesting stories to tell.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'll email you, and would you please
I'll
have
connect you. Yeah.
Yes. So what his name?
And when I get Carlos, Carlos, Carlos Romero.
Romero. So Romeo.
Yeah. And if you Google Carlos Romero coach El Salvador, you will find him.
Okay. I can Google at the same time I emailed you, so it's the best way to refer.
Yeah, and I'll just connect you to, and he has a fascinating story.
Thank you very much. Jeff, see, now we have an hour of our conversation already here beautifully, and I really appreciate you spend your morning to join our program and share your amazing journey, and I really love seeing you and your family in person one day. So settle down in Panama first, and if you decide to travel to Asia, make sure you put Vietnam onto the list, and make sure that you let us know. And my wife and I will be so happy to show you around Ho Chi Minh City, our beautiful culture and people here. Okay.
Fantastic. I really appreciate the opportunity. It's been a privilege to talk with you.
Thank you very much. You have a wonderful day. Say hello to your partner.
You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.